welcome to the Anonymous Andrew Podcast. Life and the choices we make, the choices other people make. This podcast explores all things as they relate to dating and romantic relationships. Why we ignore, or choose to ignore, or miss the red flags. Red flags like gaslighting, cheating, lying, narcissistic behavior, deception, and so much more. Join me each week as we continue my journey into the modern dating world with my weekend rants, anonymous guest dating stories, and experts who share their wisdom so we can better navigate the dating terrain. If you are new to the show or have been with me from the beginning, hold on tight for the Anonymous Andrew experience. Greetings and welcome to the Anonymous Andrew Podcast, Life and the Choices We Make. And I have made a choice this week which is a little bit out of the ordinary. I have a bad right hip and I'm going to need it replaced. So I was at the orthopedic on Friday and I am having my right hip replaced sometime in May. And the good part is that I've already been through this. I've had the left hip replaced 10 years ago. And because I'm an avid tennis player, that's what kind of did me in the first time, and now it's taking me out the second time, yada, yada, yada. So just had to get that out there. So it's going to be an interesting May, June recovery period because I'll be home for like 4 to 6 weeks, which will give me time to work on the podcast, which I am looking forward to. We may have some new interesting developments and whatever. Anyway, let's get on to today's guest. Now, I know it's the weekend, and I know you're probably thinking weekend rant. And I could do one. I have a bunch of stuff I would love to get off my chest. But we're going to save that. All right? We're going to put that off a little bit. This gentleman that I have coming up next, I really enjoyed speaking to him because out of all the coaches that I've interviewed and come across and met online, etc., I've never heard of this type of coach. It's called a mindset coach, but it's much more detailed than that and much more in depth. And as usual, I am not even going to try to go into it. I'm going to go right into the episode and let my guest, Chris Snape, explain what he does. Enjoy this episode, and we'll talk on the other side. Ciao. Greetings, everybody. Anonymous Andrew back with you with another episode. And today, I have a guest. His name is Chris Snape, S-N-A-P-E. And I'd like to welcome Christopher to my podcast. Hello, Chris.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here.
Christopher is a mindset and personal development coach. And I'm going to stop there and ask you, what does that mean in simple terms?
In simple terms, well, there's coaches for everything, right? Now, for where I stand, everything revolves around mindset. And if you can't control your mind and create the life that you want through your mind, then you can't basically exist the way you choose to exist. You're like a robot. You're a remote control based on past thoughts. And so I help people, starting with their mindset, to grow, whether or not it's fitness, business, that whole way. But it all starts with mindset. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And I would have to agree with you because I'm 63 years old, and I've been married, divorced. I'm an alcoholic in recovery. My audience knows my story. And for 30 years of my life, I have been on automatic mode, autopilot. And you mentioned robot. So I've basically been a robot for the past 30 years, just pushing through, not stopping once to do any self-reflection and looking, stopping. And it's interesting how you're down under, but up here on the upper top of the world, whatever we're called, when we're driving and we're in traffic and you see an accident, everybody slows down to look. That's what they call it, rubbernecking here, and we're all interested in what's going on. Like, is there a dead person? Is there, it's crazy, but we never stop to look at our own accidents, and I use the word accident because, or let's just say mistakes, because I have made a lot of mistakes, and I never stopped until this podcast started a little over a year ago to stop and look and examine these mistakes. And in there somewhere is the word mindset. I'm going to get to it.
Yeah.
My mindset needed to be shifted. Okay, so explain to us so we hear the term mindset a lot, all right? Whether it's on social media or the podcast. But like narcissism and gaslighting, and we hear all these new terminologies being thrown around, what does mindset mean?
Well, mindset, you see, from the moment that you're born into this world, into this reality with a complete nothing in your mind. Absolutely no thought.
Correct.
Nothing. And from that very moment, you start to be programmed, and you start to be programmed by everyone around you, your environment, your friends, your family, your parents, the doctors, the TV you listen to or watch. The schools that you go to, exactly. You get programmed into essentially believing who you are to be who you are, where in actual fact, you're simply a product made up of everybody else's thoughts, correct, everybody else's actions, everybody else's ideals. And that's who we all start off and we all believe we are, whether or not it's, at childhood or into adulthood. That's who we believe we are. And for me, it's being able to see that where you are isn't who you actually are, and start to shift the way you think about yourself and the way your mind works. That there is mindset. And when you can change the way that works, that changes every single area of your life, because you start to become disciplined in certain areas, and then that discipline goes off into every other area of your life, regardless of what it is, relationship, business, it just filters out through everything. So mindset is that. It is what you're born with, but what you believe that you are, which is a program, and it's about changing that program, that inner self-talk. That there is your mindset.
So if our minds were a computer database or a computer program that was created by mom and dad and the schools and the neighborhood and the socioeconomic neighborhood we grew up in, 10, 15, 20 years later, that program becomes self-aware. So, which is like what's happening today with artificial intelligence, which is very interesting. I'm making an analogy between our minds and a computer. Ultimately, that software has to be rewritten, but we rewrite that software in our brain, essentially.
We do. Okay. And remembering that what you're programmed with is simply a program from what they've been programmed with as well. So, your parents happen to the same thing. The people around you, they've got their own beliefs, they've got their own feelings, their own everything. So you're just like a Chinese whisper, where one thing gets passed to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, which is why we get caught in habits, and it becomes, like you mentioned, an automatic thing. Just like we breathe and our heart beats, what we do, our actions and how we react is completely automatic in every circumstance, unless you can start to see your thoughts.
Okay, and we're going to talk about, I'm glad you mentioned the word thoughts, because we're going to touch on that. I just want to validate everything you just said, because, and I mentioned this before we started recording, and my audience knows this, is that for 25, 30 years of my life, the last 25 years, I have been a robot. We talked about this earlier, of just pushing through life. One relationship ended, I would just jump into the next one, and literally with no time in between, a month maybe. And I'm not exaggerating. I would get right back on the dating app and find the next woman. And sure, yes, I was heartbroken and I was grieving, but my mindset at that time was replace that one with a new one and we'll forget that one. And that doesn't work. It didn't work for me.
And I mean, that alone was a self-program that was happening, because your comfort that your body knows and that your mind knows is to do that. Right. That is your comfort. Whether or not you consciously don't want that anymore, it's happened for so long that is your now true program belief.
Right.
And wherever that came from, see, that has come from somewhere, somewhere in the past for this to have occurred in you now.
Well, it's interesting you say that, and I don't know if I've ever said this openly on the podcast, but when my mother passed away, which was around 2008, my father remarried within a year. So where did I get that from? In other words, he did. I'm doing what he did. Now, he was married to my mom for 45, 50 years.
Yeah.
Faithful, as far as I know, faithful, and they had a loving marriage, and they were together until she passed, and then but he did not. You're married for 40-something, 50 years, and your partner passes away. I'm not criticizing my dad. I'm just pointing out. You would take some time off to grieve and then find out who you are. I think I know what my dad was thinking, because at that time he was 75 maybe. Maybe you can help me with this. I have this fear, FOMO, at 63, that if I don't find somebody soon, I'm going to be old and decrepit. And yes, I might be in love at 80 years old, but I'll be in a wheelchair. I'll be in a nursing home.
Yep.
I am still young and vibrant and full of energy, and I want to experience love, life, happiness, joy with a woman today in a healthy way.
Well, look, let's just track back just a little bit to your dad and what you essentially witnessed. Now, when it comes to thought and mindset, everything is a perspective. So how you see he went through that's your perspective. How other people see he went through that's their perspective. How he went through it is his perspective. Now, nobody can ever see his perspective, ever. It can only be from himself, from yourself, to only see your own perspective. If you have control over your thoughts, you have control over your emotions, and then your actions or reactions. It's very likely, if he was able to move on so quickly, so lovingly, so happily, that he had control over those thoughts and his emotions, that he could see what was happening, and he could then guide them where they needed to go. So that is also an amazing way that you can use your thoughts, and when you can see them and have control over them, you can use them in these most perceived grievous sort of times. You can use them to overcome the hardest adversities. Now, moving on to fear. Fear only exists in the past present moment or the future present moment, never in the present moment. See, fear comes from a past experience, a past thought, a past emotion, or your future thoughts or emotions or anything like that, but never from the present, never from now. And if you're holding fear about those subjects, it's absolutely, from what we've just spoken about now, coming from a past present moment. You know, it's filtering through to you right now, giving you that anxiety, that fear about what if this happens in the future. So you're consistently in this area living in the past.
In the past.
Never now.
Or in my case, in the future, because I want a future with somebody that I can share whatever remaining years I have left, and health. If I'm told that I'm healthy, according to my doctors. And by the way, I just wanted to just clarify one thing. My dad did call me several months after Mom passed. He called me at my job, and which he rarely ever did. And and he said to me, I just want you to know that I found a woman, and I'm going to ask her to move in, and it's likely that I'm going to marry her. And I'm telling you I was the oldest of 4 children, and my younger sister, I have 3 younger sisters. And I'm just telling you first, because I don't want you to hear it through the grapevine. And I didn't ask him why. I was taken back a little bit by like, hey Dad, Mom she's not even cold yet, But I remember these words coming out of my mouth. Dad, whatever makes you happy. If that's going to make you happy, then I'm on board. So
That's it.
Yeah, so you were talking about I didn't know his perspective. I didn't. And I didn't ask what his perspective was. Yeah. As long as that would make him happy, and that's what he wanted. And of course, we have to, as the children of older adults, we also have to be careful that our parents aren't marrying somebody who's looking to gold dig, looking for money. But I knew the woman that he was talking about, and I was safe with the fact that he wasn't going to get. He was a doctor. He was living in Florida and had some money. So sometimes we worry that our parents are going to get bamboozled out of their money, but that wasn't the case.
And that worry is real. And when you have that worry, it's not something that doesn't exist.
Oh, it's real.
But when you look at him from his perspective, if he had $10 million and married the woman that he thought was his dream love, dream life, lived with her for another 10 years and then passed away, he has fulfilled what he wanted to do, regardless if he was in a relationship for her only to take his money. Yeah. So with your perspective or your family's perspective on top of that, so you're seeing it completely separately than what he is actually doing for himself. So your thoughts around that are controlling how you see him, yet in reality, he's doing everything that he wants to do.
And it so happens that he has passed since then, and she did get half of everything. So my sisters and I had to split the rest of the estate, and they did not live 10 years together. They were only together maybe 2 or 3 more years because he developed a very rare form of cancer and also developed dementia. And we're getting off on a tangent here, but we don't think she was in it for the money, but to your point, he gave her half the estate, and that was his decision to make. And
that's right.
I have to respect that.
That's exactly right.
Let's talk about thoughts.
Let's do it.
And in your bio and in some of your, by the way, Christopher has a YouTube channel, and I've watched it, and I recommend it that you watch it. You talk about seeing your thoughts, seeing my thoughts.
Yes.
Talk to us about that a little bit.
Well, seeing your thoughts is literally the key to the universe, I say. And I almost preach this daily with the content that I put out, because everything revolves around thought. Nothing exists in this life, in our existence, without a thought. And there is actually a pre-thought that happens before a thought, but that's a whole nother subject. But essentially we have thoughts, and we touched on their subconscious programming. The thoughts come in, they cause you to have an emotion, and then they cause you to react. And all of this happens in a split second of time. And where we see this come up, a simple example, you're with your partner or your friends and somebody says something to you and you snap back at them and have your reaction. But what's happened before that is that you've had a thought and you've had an emotion for you to react in that particular way. And it's being able to catch the thought and the emotion before the reaction that is the key to starting to see your own thoughts. And when you can do that, then you can pull yourself up before you react in whatever circumstance it is, and you can decide where you want that to go.
I like the way you put that. And as you were saying that, something popped into my mind. And I don't think it was the last relationship, but one of the last several relationships I was in, when there was a confrontation between us, not necessarily an argument, but maybe a heated discussion. I had read or heard somewhere that if your partner says something, so like you just referred to two friends and they're out, and then one says something and the other one snaps back at him. So let's put that in a relationship. We're in a relationship and you say something and I immediately snap back at you. I learned, I don't know if I practiced this, but I learned somewhere that don't immediately respond. Take 10 seconds or 20 seconds and think about what that person said. And I also remember that there are times when if you're having a discussion with somebody, you have to acknowledge, and tell me if we're getting off tangent with your specialty. So you're talking to me about something in a relationship that we're trying to discuss something. I want to know that you heard me. So, hey, Christopher, I don't like the way you were acting at dinner last night with the friends, but I want you to know you need to repeat those words to me so I understand that you heard what I said, and then you get to go. So in essence what you're saying is that if we don't snap back quickly, react to the person's words, and maybe is that where the pre-thought comes in?
Well, I mean, what you're talking about there is, it comes into NLP and hypnosis and mind control that way with how the human mind thinks and how it believes and all of that sort of stuff. So you can be programmed subconsciously without even knowing it. Obviously, the simplest form that we know is hypnosis. But in all advertising forms, in everything that you see, you see it a number of times. Or if you see it on a billboard, on posters, on the internet, wherever, if you see it a number of times, you will naturally want it and think about it.
Right.
So when you relay back to somebody something that they've said in conversation, you build rapport straight away with that person without them even realizing it. So straight away, you're connected more so than you were a second ago. So if they said something to you and you just go, no, I don't like that, then that's almost a disconnect because to them, subconsciously, you haven't even acknowledged anything they've said.
Exactly.
You go, no, I don't like that. The part that you spoke about, the relationship and da-da-da-da, all of a sudden, they know that you are actually talking about what they were talking about, right, and that you were listening. So that whole part of that comes together with good communication. Like if you want to communicate well, and if you want to show yourself as a good listener, then you listen and repeat the last few words or repeat something within it. And same when you give a compliment. Everybody goes, oh, how you going? Oh, good. Oh, love the shirt you got on. You're looking good. Whatever. But it's going, oh, yeah, how you going? Love the shirt you got on. I love the color of the tie. It is so, makes your eyes pop out. That there, again, locks you straight in without them even realizing, and the rapport just locks you together straight away. So slightly went off, but it's still about the mind. It's still about how powerful the mind is in being programmed, which is how we're being programmed from the moment we're born. So when it comes to relationships and seeing a reaction, see what we all find ourselves at that reaction stage. And that's where we all get in trouble. And when you step back and you mentioned that you read or heard that you shouldn't react straight away, that you should step back and think about it, wait 10 seconds or whatever it is. Well, what are we doing there? You're stepping back, you're taking a moment, and you're essentially seeing where all of this came from the beginning. Without even thinking about it, you're stepping back and doing it. However, the problem that we all have is that we never actually get to that point. We always react first.
Yeah.
Like that's where we all are. And when you start to see your thoughts, that's okay to do that as long as you see that you've done it. And when you see that you've done it, then you can work backwards. So you can work backwards into the emotion, backwards into where the thought came from. And then you start working at that point for seeing your thoughts.
And I would imagine this is something that you have to practice at. This is not something that you wake up one morning and decide this is how you want to change your mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to, I did tell you at the beginning that I had some questions for you, but during the course of the conversation, some things came up and something popped into my mind.
Sure.
And I'm pretty sure you will be able to answer this. Talk about self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And where does that fit in everything we're talking about with thoughts, mindset, overthinking? What is self-awareness and how does that fit into all this?
Self-awareness is being present with self. If you're aware of where you are in your space, in your mind, in your environment, then you're self-aware of where you are. You see, it's when you're listening to your past thoughts or your future thoughts and they rattle on one after the other, after the other, after the other. You don't know where you are half the time. You don't know if you're thinking about something in the future. Were you thinking about something in the past? But you're looking at something now, but you're watching something on TV that's reminding you of something over here and this and that. And so where we all are and what we all do, people watch the news, listen to the radios, they see other people and listen to opinions, and they've bombarded daily by thousands and thousands and thousands of perspectives. But very rarely do they ever think for their own self and go, but is this how I think? Is this what I believe? Is this my true belief in what's going on? So self-awareness for me is simply being present, but being aware of what's around you, future, past, and present.
I have a therapist that I have been seeing for now 7 years, give or take. and when I came into sobriety, which is almost 9 years ago, I was seeing two therapists. Actually, they were for two separate things. One was was specialty in addiction, and the other one was helping me with my romantic life. Anyway, I don't remember what. I think both of them said to me within the same year or something that they were very proud of me, that I was a self-aware individual, that I was very self-aware. So that I am very, and I've also been told on this podcast that I am very open and honest and vulnerable, and I'm aware of my defects. I know what my character defects are. Having gone through the 12 steps and all that, I'm familiar with that concept. But for me, self-awareness is knowing what I have done wrong, admitting to it. That's maybe the negative side of it. The positive side of self-awareness is where I am today and how happy or how content I am in the present moment. And if I'm not, how am I going to change that? And what's interesting was over this past year that I have taken off from dating. I've gone on a few dates. So I should say I've taken off from relationships. I have not been in a relationship for the longest time.
Yeah.
I have learned so much about myself through this podcast, but through therapy and through my support groups and all that we were talking about fear before. One of my biggest fears when I left the last relationship was the fear of being alone.
Yeah.
Because I was never alone. I always had a woman next to me. And all of a sudden I was thrust into this world of loneliness. Now, yeah, during COVID, a lot of us were alone, those who lived alone, but you were always FaceTiming somebody or Zooming somebody or whatever. But there were the first 3 or 4 months after my relationship, I literally locked myself in my house and I was depressed and I wouldn't talk to anybody but during that time I said, I can't live like this.
Yeah.
This is not a way to live. And that's when I started the podcast, and that's when I decided to come out of that deep dark rabbit hole I was in. And I changed my mindset. And one of the things that I changed, because I felt that I was a victim of narcissism, a victim of gaslighting, a victim of infidelity and everything, this psychological manipulation, to not being a victim, but I'm not looking for words, terms like survivor or I'm just not a victim anymore. I chose to stay in that relationship, and I'm no longer in that. What am I going to do now? Well, for now, I'm going to podcast. I'm going to get up, go to work, because I have 2 jobs. I have a day job and a podcast job. So, okay. So far, you've hit every nail on the head of the questions I've asked. I have one more, and then I'm going to ask if there's anything you want to talk about. Before we recorded, and if you don't, that's okay. I told you last night I had some very bizarre dreams.
Yeah.
Do you have any insight into dreams, and how do they relate to thoughts?
Dreams fascinate me. Anything to do with the mind fascinates me.
Yeah.
And why do we have them? Why do some people have more of them than others? And when is it that we see? I tend to dream when I've had plenty of rest and my mind has had time just to rest, so to speak. And once I started sort of clearing my mind more and more, though, I have noticed that my dreams do, they're more sort of rare than they have been before. And because I spend a lot of my morning journaling and becoming clear of thought and allowing my intuition and whatever comes into me come out onto paper. And I had this one, profound moment where I was, it felt like I was just sitting in the middle of blackness, yet like with nothing around, yet I was completely surrounded by the most incredible love and feeling like that. And when I realized that I was there and there was literally no thought in my mind at all, I allowed myself just to be there. And I could have been there for ages. And then I realized that I had to keep going. So then I jumped back in and went, okay, this has to end now. I've got to get up and go. But I've found that since I've been doing more and more of that intuitive stuff and clearing my mind, that I go to bed and I'm empty of thought. And I used to have massive amount of thought.
A lot of us have racing thoughts before we go to bed. Yeah.
Just rattles on and on and on and on. But you see, when you can... And look, to start to see your thoughts, it's a simple process. I mean, all of this is simple, yet it's just something you've got to be consistent with. And you literally start seeing them by you have a thought, I need to go to the toilet. That's a thought. Mm-hmm. So you go, oh, that's a funny thought, need to go to the toilet. There we go. There's one of them, and I'm hungry. That's a thought. I'm now talking on this podcast. Oh, that's a thought. How's it going? That's a thought. All of these are thoughts. And when you have thoughts that are more pressurized, so for example, with your thoughts about the fear of the future, you just need to see them, start to see them. So when you start to see them, then what will happen, and it's happened to me and other people over and over again, you start to see them and you go, oh, here's this one again. I'm starting to worry. I'm starting to not like the feeling of what it might be like in the future. You see it and go, okay, well, there it is. Just let it do its thing and fall into the feeling if you want to. But next time you'll see it again and you might do the same thing over for the next 20 to 50 times that thought comes in. But then one day it will come in and it'll stop. Okay, it'll stop at that feeling and you'll go, you know what? I don't want to feel this right now. And you'll flick it away. And it'll do it again. And then you'll see it and you'll flick it away. And the more that happens, the more you see it, then it reverses. Then you see the thought before you have the feeling. And then you see it coming, oh, I'm having this thought now. No, I don't want that. So you flick it away before the feeling. And eventually what happens is that your mind does not send you those thoughts anymore. They completely disappear. It's as if your mind's gone, well, you know what? I'm not even going to bother anymore because, they're not doing what I want you to do, which initially they're there to protect you. That's what they think with the subconscious programming. But what you're doing by doing that and seeing them is you're reprogramming it, saying, no, I don't want that, don't want that, don't want that, until eventually it's gone. And it literally disappears and it doesn't come back in. And if it does resurface at any point, you see it before it lingers on. So it's incredible. But dreams.
Well, and boy, I almost feel like we could do another episode on dreams, but and maybe we can do that someday because I have lots of questions. Because last night, for example, I woke up in the middle of the night because it was almost a nightmare. It wasn't like a nightmare, like I was falling off a cliff or something.
Yeah.
But whatever it was woke me up, and yes, I went and used the toilet, but I came back and I sat in my bed. And I was sitting there for a few minutes, and I was shaking my head, saying, "Where the fuck did that come from?" And because it was about my ex-wife, and we've been divorced 20-something years, and it's like whatever, and it was just boggling. But there are some mornings where I wake up and I know I dreamt, but I couldn't tell you what the hell the dream was about. Mm-hmm. So. There's another whole discussion there about how come we can't remember our dreams.
Yeah.
I keep saying one more question, but you're bringing up some good stuff here. Meditation. Mm-hmm. I would imagine you might be involved in that. I meditate and I use an app. It's a fairly common app, and what they tell you is in order to empty your mind of these thoughts, is you focus on your breathing. And if a thought comes in, you acknowledge it and then you pass it on. You just say, "Oh, okay." Because if let's say I'm just sitting here and I'm meditating and I have a candle in front of me, whether your eyes are open or not, whatever, the thought comes into your mind, and they tell you to acknowledge it, but then let it go. And you were talking about before that if you do this enough, your brain will become accustomed to pushing that thought along, or not even coming in at all at the beginning. So I would love to be able to go to bed every night with an empty brain, or as you said, with no thoughts in my head. Yeah. I'm getting there, but it's okay, Christopher. I'm going to throw it to you. We got a few minutes left. Let's tell me a little bit about your practice, your coaching, or if there's anything we didn't cover you'd like to cover, or
sure. I mean, look, so much we could go on, but on with this.
Oh, sure.
I mean, look, what I do with the mindset and personal development coaching that I have, I've got two different programs, and one is purely over mindset and personal development, and the other one includes a fitness side to it as well with an app, and all of these include like one-on-one Zoom calls with me. You can guarantee if you message me, it is me who responds. There's no extra thing or bot or AI or anything like that. So it revolves around, firstly, in both programs, changing your mindset. And then there becomes a set of disciplines that we implement for you. And the disciplines put you in that adversity, really challenge you. Because when you can step up and defeat and jump into that adversity, no matter what with adversity, if you hit it head on and you go for it, no matter what, you will get to the other side. Regardless of how you perceived you went during that time, you will get to the other side, you will have raised your frequency, and next time that same adversity comes, you'll already be through it. So we work heavily on disciplines and allowing you to start to change that way. All while we have our group calls and things like that allow us to talk about where people are at and where their mind is at and all that sort of thing. So that's where I'm at with the two programs that I've got. SnapeLife.com. If you go to that, it'll take you to the Instagram account and the other bits and pieces. So SnapeLife.com. But essentially, that's what I'm about. I'm about wanting to get out there and help people change their life from the inside out. And this can be from people that have addictions with alcohol or drugs or food addictions. This can all be solved by changing your mindset, by changing the mind. And I've seen it over and over again. You'll see on my Instagram and on my social media that I'm at the gym all the time doing stuff. I'm up at 2:30 in the morning. I'm at the gym by 3 o'clock. I am never and never would have thought I'm a gym person, because I'm just not. Because it's not about the gym. It's about the mindset. It's about the discipline. Right. And when you can control that and overcome that, then it filters out so vastly to everywhere else. You are just so solid. And all the other things like becoming fit and healthy, and all of that is a byproduct of what you do with your mind and with your disciplines.
Right. Oh, I believe that. Yeah. And you know what? What's interesting was this season is about dating, and we didn't even get into that. But I found everything that we're talking about fascinating, because
thank you.
I am into meditation and the esoteric world, and like you said before, the mind is a fascinating playground, and dreaming and thoughts. I find it. We spoke about it earlier, but the book by Michael Singer, The Untethered Soul, and his follow-up books are fantastic, all about thoughts and
well, Well, I'm in the middle of writing a book, actually. I'm in the middle of putting it together, 100 days if you can go through these 100 days, by the end of it, you will be a changed person, you know. And it's just incredible, the information that's in there, that there's so much stuff, you know, in it that will lift you from wherever you are and help you move. And there'll be parts that you resonate with and parts that you would skip over and go to the next. But it's incredible. I'm excited about that, because it itself just came off my journaling and my intuition and all of that sort of stuff. And that's the best stuff. You know, that's the best information you can ever get from your intuition.
When your book publishes, whenever that might be, would you come back and talk to us about it? And I'll
absolutely. I would love to come back and talk. And I mean, relationships and manifesting and creating your own story and your life. Oh my God, we could go on forever.
I think we need to do a part 2. I'm going to be honest with the audience. When I first came across Christopher, I was doubtful. I was like, what are we going to talk about? And now I want to do a part 2 with you. So
absolutely
fascinating. So. But Christopher, we do got to wrap it up.
Yep.
But I promise you, when you that book is either going up on Amazon or wherever it goes, and you're ready to come back, let's do it. And then we'll also maybe dive into a little bit about how relationships play into this, because I really wanted to get into that. But everything we talked about was fascinating. So one more time, where can we find you online?
SnapeLife.com will get you everywhere.
Okay, and then I have some of your other social media links. I'll put all that in the show notes. So
great.
All right, Christopher, thank you so much for joining us. It was fascinating.
Thank you, Andrew. It's been a pleasure. Absolutely.
I would like to thank Christopher Snape for joining me and teaching us all about mindset. Like I said, folks, I've been traveling through my life stuck in one gear. And, you know, as I recorded that and said that and then listened back to it while I was editing it, there was a few times in my life that I did get sober and clean up my act. But cleaning up yourself and stop imbibing and ingesting drugs and alcohol for a month or a year isn't the same thing as stopping and reflecting on what you're doing wrong in your life. And that's what I've never done until recently. Unfortunately, it's at this ripe age of 60. Anyway, I'd like to thank Chris very much for explaining all of that to us, and I definitely can relate to the mindset. And if you are... Oh, wait. I have something to tell you guys. I went on a date today. This is a weekend. It was a brunch date, and it went very well. And I am only going to say that. If I say any more, I'll jinx myself like I did last time, and yada, yada, yada. So let's just leave it at that. I had a good date today, and there will be a second, and I will feed you that information slowly and surely, but you know what happened last time. All right, if you like this podcast, please give me some reviews down below and share it with a friend. And if you are going to get into a relationship, I beg of you to take some time and think, is this the right person for me? Red flags. Are there any? Until next time, folks. Anonymous Andrew. Ciao.